What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some spoilers in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. This is stuff that I didn't outright say in my review because it's going to be more specific on some of the later stuff that happens, some of the side missions, and we'll go from there. So kind of buckle in. This is probably the closest thing to a legit podcast that I make on this channel, and let's just get into it. So, as I said, I really love this game, and I do love this game, I would say, because of some of the big moments. It's not the only reason, but a lot of the big, spoiler-like things, I would say didn't let me down. Maybe there's a couple here and there that I would have liked to have been done differently, but overall, I enjoyed pretty much, I'm not going to say all of them, most of them. So let's talk first about the actual main story, and then any of the side missions that have kind of integral parts to it. We'll talk about that as well. So in terms of the main story, as I said, I really like the characters. I think the characters really carry it at times. Obviously, there's a lot of cinematics in it as well. I think MJ is a phenomenal character. I'm actually going to make videos on specific characters as this week goes on. Her transformation to Scream. Here's the thing. I've seen people complaining about it, and I'll just come out and say, for me, I don't have any knowledge, of that stuff. I don't really have the right inside of me to be all that mad. If you're mad about it, if people are kind of upset that they made her it, because I understand, at least from reading about the Wikipedia of Scream, I don't think MJ's ever been her. I will say they made MJ very, very powerful, and I think most of it was fine. And they even used when she went overseas, she learned some training, right? So her hand-to-hand stuff, and it's not like she's a mixed martial artist. She's pretty okay, but she's not incredible. I didn't mind that. I think the only thing I didn't mind with her is when she had the gun and she was facing off against the symbiotes. I actually liked the gunplay. They did fine for me. Now, remember, they made Resistance, and Resistance is a top-tier franchise. It's not as good, shooting-wise as Resistance, but I thought it was fun to play as. I'm just not 100% sure I love, her being so powerful. And then her transforming into Scream and then coming back. I didn't mind it. Personally, I thought it made sense for her character. Again, I get that she didn't do it in the comics or stuff, but I thought, in the background, she went through a lot in this game. And, actually, when I made the story explained video that's up on the channel, I rewatched, the entire game for that. And you notice, smaller things, even phone calls with Peter. It's like MJ's kind of struggling behind the scenes, and you're so focused on Peter and Miles because you play as them, and then you're so focused on Harry, you don't really focus too much on MJ, even though she's a great character. I thought it made sense. And, I'm spending a long time talking about it because I think, her transformation into Scream and then out of it, I thought that was a pretty big part of the game. I didn't mind that at all. In fact, I quite liked it. Venom, oh boy. I mean, all of Venom, I actually really, really loved. I kind of expected to love it, so in terms of, did anything kind of catch me off guard? He wasn't as, okay, again, my knowledge of Venom is not all that vast. I don't mind this. He wasn't very, funny. There weren't a lot of jokes to it. Not that I need it. Not that I need it at all. I thought there'd actually be a little bit more kind of, quipping back and forth. But, there was a little, I'd say very, very minimal. But overall, number one, Tony Todd, insanely good job. But the design, how Venom looks, he looks so freaking cool. And the game is beautiful, right? All the characters, there are sometimes the faces don't look so great, but most of the time, in cutscenes and stuff, characters look phenomenal. The environment, the big cinematic moments. But Venom, man, outside, when the rain's coming down, he looks so good. Obviously, playing as him. So Venom just as a whole, obviously we got to talk about Harry as well, but Venom, let's say as a character, Tony Todd's voice and that entire arc and how he looked and how he played, yes, absolutely. Give me a Venom game, okay? And I really think, you do not make Venom playable, even though he was playable for 10, 12 minutes. You don't make him playable if that's not something that you're thinking of doing later, okay? So I 1,000% think we're getting that Venom either spin-off game or he's going to be playable as a DLC thing. It's happening. You just absolutely don't do it unless it's happening, in my opinion. So I thought it was a blast. I actually audibly, I said, yes, I told my wife, I was like, they did it. We get to play as Venom. I actually said that out loud. So it did make me extremely happy. You could kind of see it coming. I personally believe, as Peter gets thrown, I think the camera, I'm trying to remember it offhand, the camera kind of shifts in a weird direction when Norman comes with the gang, and when the camera starts to move, it's oh yeah, it's positioning itself to get us out of the cutscene and into playing as him. So it didn't just drop you playing as him, but it got pretty close to that. So I thought that was an incredible moment. I think Venom was super fun to play, and like the boss fights were actually really good, I'd say, across the entire game. A little too reliant on the parrying system for my personal taste, but overall pretty clever, and a lot of the bosses were really fun. I think that Kraven versus Venom fight was awesome because you're like so much more powerful, right? Whereas when you were playing with Peter against him, or even Miles against Peter, or even later on when you're Peter against Venom, you're kind of the underdog. Like every time, you're not really. I don't know if you like we're doing betting odds on it, right? You wouldn't be expected for that. It's like, well, Kraven's injured. He's dying. He already was dying, but he's been beaten up, by Peter. He's on his last breath. He just wants a good fight against Venom. You know you're gonna crush him, but you feel it. You feel it in the gameplay as well. So I thought that boss fight was awesome. I thought Kraven's death was insanely cool, and the Harry thing, or let's just I guess talk about Harry as a character, and then going into the ending with what they do with Harry. I loved it. I really, we predicted this. Like Harry was going to be pretty important to the story. In fact, in some cases, he would kind of carry the emotional load, and I think that's true. I think so much of this game revolves around the relationship, really kind of like the brotherhood between Peter and Harry. If you don't have that, and if it doesn't work, and I think that's honestly a testament to the writing, it's a testament to the voice act. I mentioned like Laura Bailey as MJ, right? She did phenomenal, and really even like Yuri Lowenthal, right? Like everybody works so well together, interacting with each other. So that needed to work to make the story work, and I think it did. I think Harry was a great character. He comes across very likable, even though, you're a little skeptical. Obviously, even with the symbiote, you're like, all right, well, what's going to go wrong, and how's it going to get transferred to Peter? We'll talk about that in a second, too. But I think it worked, and I think even his the addiction thing when he loses the symbiote and he's dying, and it's like, well, I really need it back. Like, you really need to give it to me back. I loved it. And I also thought it was pretty reasonable, by the way, that, I was not dying because I had it. I kind of had it under control. You took it from me because you got stabbed and you were dying, and then all I want is it back because I'm kind of dying again. Very reasonable request, if we're being honest, but I think it all worked so well, and I think the idea of, healing the world and doing right by his mom, and then obviously, the fight with Venom towards the end, and Harry kind of breaking free just for a second, to talk, and even like the final EMF, I believe, mission of the game. It's pretty like heart-wrenching, when Harry's talking about, I'm going to do this thing for kind of both of our loved ones, and, and a lot of like I love yous, and again, a lot of this like friendship, brotherhood stuff throughout the entire game. I thought they did it so well, and again, like I called this game, this is one of my favorite games of the year. If the story didn't land, there's no way it would have made, my top 3. I think about my top games: Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is just an overall great package. Maybe even like the Dead Space remake, Baldur's Gate. Like, if you don't have a good story for Spider-Man, you're kind of screwed in my, at least, top race for games. But it did. I thought all the major moments of the main story, Kraven killing Scorpion and then finding out he killed Vulture, and people were telling me in my video that he also killed Shocker. Like, Kraven just went on a freaking massacre against these people. Just to stop this love fest, just for a second here, one thing I will throw in terms of a negative while I'm thinking about it: Black Cat. I really like Black Cat. I thought she was thrown in, and I mentioned this, I think, in the review, as like a glorified cameo. She's great, and her segment, by the way, let me throw this in. They really wanted to use that Ratchet and Clank tech, okay? Now, they kind of used it with Miles, but they went all the way in terms of swapping scenes on a dime using the PS5's, power, and I'm very happy they did it. But it was also kind of clear that, not like tech testy, but I kind of got the feeling that they're showing off rather than fully just like doing it for the game. Yes, the game like demanded it at times, and I'm thinking like Mysterio. I think the use of, just jumping to different, I don't know, like when they would just transfer the world, right? I think that made sense, and I think that was also like a show-offy, hey, look what we can do with the tech. Black Cat was kind of the same thing, though, but I thought lesser, where, you're flying, you're doing your web wings with Miles, and she transports you to wherever it was, Alaska, there's a lot of snow, and then you come back. It's cool. It's very like tech demo-y, where it's again like, well, we have this technology where we can swap the environment in a blink of an eye, so let's use it. I don't know if you needed Black Cat for that, and she kind of just comes and goes, and then she calls on the phone saying that she did the Paris thing, and that she's back and she has like a lead for you, but she never comes back. And I thought they were going to do more with her. So, she's probably actually one of the biggest weaknesses, where she's great. She was great in the scenes that she was in. But I kind of thought she'd be in it more than what she was. Honestly, I would say on the flip side of things, Yuri, and Wraith was used pretty much exactly how I thought. And I think they did it very, very well. The relationship she has with Peter, I thought was great. And their relationship isn't necessarily great. But again, I thought well written, well acted. It was great to see those two together, and Peter not knowing, even in the beginning, like, who is this person? And of course, that does lead to Carnage. I got to be honest, I got to throw out, again, my lack of knowledge. I didn't know until the end. Like, once he had the symbiote, and now he literally says Carnage too, but once he had the symbiote, I was like, I get what you've done here. But honestly, leading into it, I did not see that coming, simply because I'm not, like, well-versed, in comics and things like that. Even Silk, I had to look up, the ending, which is very cool. I didn't know who that was. I had to look it up, and, impactful once you figure it out. But, there's that moment. I mentioned Peter, his almost death. That caught me. I'll be honest, like, going into this game, he's going to get the symbiote. Harry had it first, so, like, how's the transfer going to go? I got to be honest, I put next to zero thought into how it was going to go. So when you're trying to stop Connors from turning, it's like, well, it's just casual. Like, I don't even know when it's going to happen. When he does turn, though, as he's turning, you're thinking, okay, well, we saw the mission, right? Like, they showed us that water mission chasing Lizard, and Peter has the suit. So he's got to get it soon, but it doesn't have to be right here. And also, how is he going to get it? So I did not really see, Kraven stabbing him coming. I didn't see him, like, basically dying coming. And that got me. And again, I think the acting, the writing between him and MJ was phenomenal. They sold it. They sold he was dying, and MJ sold the loss of him. And Harry when he gets kind of brought in, but MJ, is carrying him through. I thought that was such a great scene. That's a scene I could see myself, like, rewatching over and over. And again, that just shows, like, the power of Kraven. Kraven is I think, in this game, he's a cool villain. He does a lot, but he does a lot kind of off stage. Like, you don't really see what he's doing, but he's powerful. Kind of what he's up to, especially when you do side stuff, and even in the main missions, obviously, you figure it out as well. So I thought that was fantastic as well. I'd say another potential weakness, Chameleon. Cool that they were kind of introducing it through the side thing. It didn't really go anywhere. That's something I could see, I guess, finishing itself off in a side, like a DLC. But are you going to do, like, an Icky Island, like a big 10, 15-hour DLC? Would you do that with Chameleon as the lead villain? I don't really think so. I think you'd probably do something else. So I don't know when that would be resolved. Whereas, like, Carnage, you can use that down the line for a Venom spinoff game. You could bring him into Spider-Man 3, right? And that really leads to another big moment, right? The first credit scene, or the mid-credit scene, I guess, with Norman. I feel like, well, they kind of showed Otto, like, early on in that scene, right? But it was like, oh, yeah, well, we're going there. Where these two are going to not necessarily reunite, but, like, we're going all in for a Green Goblin. Doc Ock's going to come back for a Spider-Man 3. And I thought that was freaking awesome without even doing too much, because that conversation was pretty short. Oh, that's it. You know what? And I'm leading myself on basically in this conversation. One negative that does kind of haunt me even to, like, right now. I actually did see another one on Twitter. I'll mention that in a second. Norman flipping the switch on not liking Spider-Man, I didn't like. And I don't know if I ever will, because, here's the thing. He sees Venom. Like, he's being choked by Venom, right? He knows the predicament that Harry is in. He knows how badly Harry was dying without it, sure, but he knows what he is now, okay? Now, I get, like, the father-son love, and he's never going to lose him and all that stuff, okay? He tells Peter, or technically, he knows him as Spider-Man, right? He tells Spider-Man to save his son, whereas Connors tells him, you need to kill Harry. So, but here's the thing, like, Connors almost certainly would have told Norman that, right? Where it's like, he obviously wants to save his son, but the science, Connors' side of things would be, well, if you don't really have a choice, Venom is too strongly connected, and the only way to stop him would be to kill Harry, right? So, like, okay, Peter goes off, or Spider-Man goes off, And Norman probably knows, right, that it's like a 50-50 shot. Like, well, he'll try to save him, but, I was just told by the doctor that you probably need to kill him in order to stop everything. So then when Peter brings, Harry out and he's alive and Norman flips out, why? Even after when the doctor tells Norman, like, he may never wake up. Well, like, I get that would be, catastrophic, and he, loses his son. He already lost his wife. Like, I get that. But specifically when he's carrying Harry out and Norman, runs into him, why are you so mad? You were told, in fact, you told them to save Harry, which is exactly what they did. They didn't kill him. He's still alive. And then secondly, you were also probably told by your doctors that he would need to be killed to stop Venom. So Peter and Miles did like the best case scenario. They saved him. They stopped Venom. In fact, they killed Venom. Now, Norman might not know some of those finer details, but all he knows is he was told that Harry might have to die and that he came back, and he came back alive. Yeah, not fully alive, not fully awake, but he did come back. So for him to be so upset and then to go to Otto and ask for their real life, who they are, because he's going to go after them, seems like quite a jump, doesn't it? Now, I know he's kind of unhinged and, I don't know, like there always has to be a reason, I guess, why you flip the switch for a villain thing, but I don't really know if that was enough of a reason for me to fully, buy that. And then one final thing before I forget, Twitter, I saw, people kind of speculating or discussing if he had more than one symbiote thing, right? Because like Carnage, or, the guy, Cletus, he gets, the symbiote. That was the whole point, right? So if he got it, is there more than one that's at Oscorp? Because if there's more than one symbiote, and then once it left Harry, why couldn't Norman have just given Harry the symbiote? Was it maybe being transferred to him, or he didn't know about? I don't know how he wouldn't know about it, right? So that could be a plot hole, and I would actually very much accept that as a plot hole if you want to argue that. But that was another thing. I don't know if I can ever unhear that. But the Norman specifically, him switching on Spider-Man, that kind of upset me, I guess. But beyond that, I liked pretty much everything. Sandman was awesome. Again, I mentioned a lot of the boss fights. Some of the boss fight, like the Yuri boss fight, wasn't that great, but it was cool to actually fight her. Fighting Venom was freaking amazing, both as Peter and as Miles. Fighting Peter as Miles was also so cool. The use of the bell that you could use, the use of, even when you're fighting the enemies and you can use kind of car alarms. I loved it. I thought a lot of the story stuff made its way through and did well. I like Peter's kind of retirement thing. It definitely made sense. I think, I mentioned the whole Miles being very powerful I think in the review, and while Peter's main story drives the story, literally the story, Miles, I feel like they are pushing him to be way more powerful and way more prevalent, which I don't hate. I kind of understand why they're doing it, but I just am aware, I think many people are probably aware that it's happening. He solves most of, if not all of the problems. Without him, Peter gets lost to Venom, or, so much happens if Miles doesn't help. Yeah, they make him very useful, but they also, I don't know, I feel like he's kind of becoming he's too good at fixing literally everything, and he fixes his own stuff, right? He gets his life in order with Lee, he transforms Lee into just a guy who wants redemption, and he also solves Peter's problems, he solves pretty much everything, so don't know if I love that too much, but I didn't hate it or anything, it was just something I can think of right now. But there you go, I think that's everything I want to say. If there's anything I missed that is spoilers that you want to hear from me, let me know in the comments. I could try to respond it. If there's a specific scene or something you want to talk about, let me know. Make sure, as always, guys, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.